more or less the same as it would have been in 1821 when the Pope stopped the burials. They closed off this wall here, and you weren't allowed to bury in here anymore. Occasionally, since 1821, a few people have been buried here, but only with very, very special permission. We can't really use it for burials anymore, and it's rather good really, because it hasn't changed, it hasn't been ruined. It's just as people would have seen it in 1821. We try to keep it quite natural. If this was England, you know, they would be polishing everything. They would have grass that long, and they would say, this is disgustingly untidy garden. But in fact, we keep it natural, not only for economic reasons, but also because we like it to be picturesque. We think that part of the characteristics of Rome in general and of this cemetery is the sort of the casual mixed in with how man tries to control his environment. So we've got tombstones made by humans, but they're they've settled into the natural environment. And that's really, I think, how the people that set up this cemetery would have liked it. We have, for the Americans in our group, we have a sequoia tree imported complete with license from California and donated to us. When it arrived 3-4 years ago, it was about that tall. We had to protect it because we thought the cats might squash it. I'm amazed by how much it's growing, but people tell me that sequoia trees in Europe grow very fast at the beginning, but then they slow down. I fear, however, that quite soon it's going to block out the tomb and will have to be removed and taken to our cooperative, who have a farm out in the country, who will look after it beautifully, I'm sure. The nice thing about this cemetery, in many ways, is that we don't charge an admission fee. If we charged an admission fee, we would become a museum. In a way, we are a museum, but we're a living museum, which sounds a bit ironic for a cemetery, I suppose, but it's a place. Something again unusual about it is we still bury people even now. We do about 20 burials a year. We have a small amount of space for tombs of funeral urns, for people who have been cremated, and we do quite a few burials. That's quite unusual in such a historic place. So everything we do, we have to do with great respect, because our number one user, let's say, our number one client is are of course the families of people who are buried here. So whenever we do anything, we're very careful about selecting the kind of thing we do. If we do a film, we ask very carefully for a complete breakdown of what's going to be said, what's going to be done, so that we can keep the respectful attitude towards the cemetery. On the other hand, though, this cemetery belongs to the foreign community, but also to Rome, and particularly to the people of Testaccio. So we try to encourage people, particularly from round here. Hello, Antonello. Hi. Ciao, ciao. We try to encourage people to come when they feel like it to this place. And we have students sitting on the benches under the trees in the summer. I have had students coming to me say, I don't know how I would have managed to get through my exams. I didn't have air conditioning 20 years ago, so I came to the cemetery to cool off under the trees on the summer afternoons. We have mothers pushing prams with babies who whiz around the Parte Antica and put their babies to sleep. So it's a place that's lived in and cared about. If people know a place, they care about the place, we hope that they will keep it better for the future. Let's go on to our living now. ill. He came to Italy in a last-ditch attempt to recover from his tuberculosis. Sadly, he arrived in November and died in February of the next year. So he was only here for a few months, and he certainly chose, if you've lived in Rome, which I think most of you have for some time, you know that probably November to February are not the best months of the year if you are suffering from tuberculosis or any kind of that kind of illness. He came with the young English artist Joseph Seven, and Joseph Seven was with him. As you know, if you know the Keats Shelley house, he died basically in Seven's arms. Seven looked after him towards the end of his life, and he asked Seven, Keats never actually saw this cemetery, but he knew he was dying, and he asked his friend Seven to come down and book a place for him. When Seven came back and told Keats, look, I've booked a nice place for you, and it's waiting for you, he said, oh, I feel much better now. I can feel the daisies growing over me. And this is why, another reason why we keep the grass here quite long, particularly in the spring, because the daisies and the violets that you can see were the flowers talked about by both Keats and by Shelley. So there's a direct sort of natural connection there. Keats asked Seven not to write his name on his gravestone after his death, which was extremely inconvenient for us, because often visitors come in and say, I can't find the Keats grave. Oh, we forgot to tell you, actually it doesn't say John Keats on the gravestone, it says the young English poet whose name was writ in water, therefore making it even more romantic than it already was. So he promised his friend he wouldn't write his name on his gravestone, but of course after Keats died he became much more famous, much more important in the history of literature, and Seven rather regretted his promise to his friend, but he didn't want to break it. So what did he do? About 50 years after Keats's death, Seven incidentally stayed on in Rome and became an artist in the foreign community here. He married an English woman. They had several children, one of whom sadly died young, and he's buried there in the centre there. Little Arthur died as a baby and is buried there as well. 50 years after Keats had died, Seven, who I think was a practical kind of person, managed to get some sponsors to put this plaque up. And here you see they wrote this piece of poetry, terribly Victorian, I always think, rather slightly, I'm not sure if it's in perfect taste, but they wrote this piece of poetry with each line starting with the letter of Keats's name. So therefore he was able to have Keats's name there, but without actually still respecting his friend's wishes not to have his name on his tombstone. If you look at the back of the tombstone of Seven, you will see